Let's tell you about the Socio-Economic Rights Institute of South Africa. They've temporarily shut their doors. SERI is accusing the City of Johannesburg's councilor Nkululeko Mbundu of inciting violence against its staff. This is after almost 400 informal traders were allowed to return by a court to the Villiers precinct in the Johannesburg CBD. We're now joined by Nomzamo Zondo, the Executive Director of the Socio-Economic Rights Institute of South Africa. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your patience with us. Maybe let's start with the work that the Institute does. I think you can hear me, but we can't hear you. I think you've muted yourself.
Thank you. So SERI has been around for over 12 years. During that time, we represented communities facing eviction. We represent informal traders and other informal workers, domestic workers, farm workers, and I think more noticeably, we've also represented the families of the deceased Marikana mine workers. The case that brought on this onslaught is a case that we've been working on since October 2013. And in fact, the court order was issued by the Constitutional Court in December 2013. We've had an ongoing relationship with the South African Informal Traders Forum, which we represent in this case, and the 604 informal traders that were affected. And when we brought the application, we didn't just bring the application, we wrote to the City of Johannesburg demanding that they should allow the informal traders to continue with their trade and pointing out that their action is in contempt of the 2013 court order. That demand was ignored. We then issued court papers. And in those court papers, we point out that they're in contempt and we ask for relief. When we went to court on the 27th of July, the City of Johannesburg had not filed court papers, but what they did is that within an hour after we left court, they sent us an offer saying they are willing to allow our clients to go back and trade, and that they would even pay our costs after a few hours of negotiation. But surprisingly, after that, after the matter was settled, as per their proposal, MMC Mbundu made statements on Twitter which gave the impression that the city, that people would invade the Villiers because of SERI's work. He gave the impression that SERI had interdicted the city. He also, most worryingly, gave the impression that SERI used locals as a front in bringing the application.
Right. And so you have since, as a result, asked your members not to report for duty and not to come to the offices. That's because now things have escalated and you're finding that you are being intimidated on social media. Tell us about whether, first, people have been allowed to get back into the office and what that intimidation looks like.
So we have closed down our office, and even this morning when we had a staff meeting, I pleaded with our staff not to go anywhere near the office because several people have tweeted our office address. Others have tweeted that we must be followed home, that people must take pictures of us and share them. Others have tweeted that we must be lynched. Someone else suggested that we must be taken to a disused mine in Kruger store. There were several tweets, even again, saying our offices must be burned down. Because of those threats, I am not comfortable as the ex-director, and even SERI's board is not comfortable with employees being in the office. This, of course, would affect our work, but we will do our best in the circumstances. It is important that we come out of this alive. But more importantly, and what has been worrying to us, has been the targeting of the two lawyers who litigated this case. The targeting of Nkululeko Mbundu, who is an attorney in our office, who's worked in this case, who's worked with informal traders for over 4 years, who's worked alongside the City of Johannesburg for years. In fact, the last case that we litigated in the very same De Villiers Street precinct, we were respondents in a case that was brought by a private property owner. And in that case, we worked very well with the City of Johannesburg, representing the very same informal traders. So it was surprising to us that in this instance, when we have settled on the city's invitation, we find ourselves in this kind of situation.
And just to let you and our viewers know, we have invited the MMC for Economic Development in Johannesburg, Mr. Nkululeko Mbundu, to come onto the program. Unfortunately, by the time of this interview, he was not able to make it, but we are speaking to him a little bit after 2 o'clock today to get his side of the story. But when we go back to that court action, which eventually led to some of those informal traders getting back onto the streets, you note that by the 27th of July, the city had not responded to some of your concerns. Do you perceive that somebody within the city dropped the ball here?
Look, so yesterday we hosted a press conference. Before we sent the invitation to the press conference, we sent that invitation to MMC Mbundu. We sent it to his political party, Action South Africa. We also sent that invitation to the mayor of Johannesburg. The mayor responded by inviting us to a meeting at her office, and she met with us with some officials from the city of Johannesburg. And following that meeting, the city issued a statement, a written statement, and in fact they presented that statement in our press conference, where they distanced themselves from the tweets that were made by Councilor Mbundu. They asked people to desist from making threats to SERI and their staff. They denounced the threats that have been made to us. I'm not sure if people with your producers have seen the statement issued by the City of Johannesburg, but we will also be sharing it on our Twitter page. Basically, the position of the mayor has been they are going to be investigating who dropped the ball in relation to the 2013 interdict and in relation to the interpretation of the corridor that the city agreed to on the 27th of July.
Ma'am, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. And also just to note that we will be speaking to MMC Mbundu just a little after 2 p.m.